Welcome back guys, and in this video we will be looking at how can you perform RMAN cloning from a live database. You know guys, RMAN has a lot of capabilities. RMAN is the most powerful tool a DBA can have. But do you know that by just following 6 steps you can perform an active database cloning? Like you have a live database running, and for this live database you have no backup at all, like no backup taken. So this live running database, we will be performing cloning of a live running database using RMAN. Also, one thing you guys need to note is in this video we will be looking at the same SID cloning. So on the source server, the database SID will be prod, and after cloning, the clone database SID will still be prod. Let us move on to my system and look at this RMAN cloning. Alright guys, so we are back onto my system, and over here I have two servers. On the left hand side, I'm in the first window. The first tab is my prod server. This is where one production or the prod database is up and running. Let's check the pmon, ps-ef grep pmon. You can see prod pmon is up and running. And also guys, I'll show you something. env grep ora. So these are the environment variables. You can see the Oracle home over here is this one, that is U01 app Oracle product 12201. I also have a test server where no pmon is running. You can check this one, and if you check the environment variables, you can see Oracle is already installed on the exact same Oracle home. Our goal right now is to perform an active database cloning of this prod database from this prod server to the test server where the Oracle home remains exactly same. Alright, so the Oracle home locations are same. The database SID after cloning will also remain exactly same. So once we clone the prod database onto the test server, still the name of the database will remain exactly same, that is prod. It is one of the simplest active RMAN database cloning. So what you can do is, guys, go to our support website, support.dbagenesis.com, and if you search for RMAN duplicate from active database, you will get this article. I have two scenarios covered over here. Right now we are looking at the first scenario, that is RMAN duplicate database to same SID. This is, we are duplicating from a live database. That means no backup has been taken on the prod database. There is no backup, no RMAN backup, zero. It is a fresh installation. So no backup taken for the prod database, and we are going to perform the cloning from the active, that is like the running database. The database is already up and running, and we will be performing the active cloning. And yes, we'll be using RMAN to perform the active database cloning. And after cloning, the database SID remains exactly same as the source database. So we will be using the first scenario in this video. So RMAN duplicate database to same SID. The first thing we need to do is we need to configure the listener on the clone server to accept the incoming connections. In our case, our clone server is the test server. So we need to create a listener over here. So I will get into oracle_home/network/admin and vi listener.aura. This is the listener entry or the listener file. I'll copy these contents and just put it over here. So what all things we need to change? First thing that we need to change is the host. So I'll put the IP address of the test server where this listener will be accepting the connections, 172.20.10.12. The port is 1521, and we need to change the Oracle home. So I think I'll copy and paste the Oracle home. I'll copy it from the prod because Oracle home is exactly same on both the servers. So we'll just paste it, and the SID name remains prod. So that is same. Let us save. Now we'll start this listener, lsnrctl start listener, and this listener should be up and running in some time. All right, our listener is up and running. Now on the prod server or the source server, we need to configure a TNS entry so that our prod server can connect to the test server where this listener is up and running. So we will go to the prod server. We will get inside Oracle underscore home network admin and vitns names.aura. This is the file which will contain the TNS entries to connect to the clone server. So the name that I'm giving to this TNS entry is prod underscore clone because this will be our test server. Give the IP address of the test server where we are going to clone this database. So I'll put the IP address as 172.20.10.12. I think that's the correct IP address, and the service name will still remain prod because we are cloning from prod to prod. Also, if you see, the listener is accepting connection for the prod service, right? Save and close the TNS entries on prod and let us perform a TNS ping. So prod underscore clone, this should ping our test server. It's working perfectly fine, you can see. Alright, let's move on. So TNS ping is fine. Now we are performing the actual cloning steps. Our first step on prod server, create pfile from spfile and copy to clone server. Let us connect to SQL Plus. We'll create this pfile from spfile slash sysdba. So create pfile from spfile, we'll exit, and we need to copy this to the test server. So where do we find our pfile, Oracle Home DBS location, right? ls-lrt init prod.aura. This is the pfile init prod.aura, and I need to copy to Oracle at 172.20.10.12. This is the server, and I want to copy it into the same location, Oracle underscore home slash DBS, because Oracle Home is exactly same on both the servers. Hit enter, give the password for the other server, and let us see. Alright, so this is copied. Init prod.aura is copied. So we have the p file which is copied onto the clone server. Now the next step is also copy the password file from the prod to clone server. You can see under the DBS location, we are already in the DBS location. There is a file aura pw. This is the password file. So I'll copy this file scp aura pw and I'll copy it to Oracle at the same location where we copied the p file. Alright. So give the password of this server and done. So we copied the p file from the prod to clone and we copied the password file from prod to clone. This is done. And on the clone server, open the p file that you copied from prod server and create the directory locations. See guys, on the prod server, we have the locations where we have the control file, the data files, the log files. The same locations might not exist on the server where you're cloning. So the first thing we have to do is we have to create those directory locations so that when you clone from the active database using RMAN, RMAN can create those files inside the right locations. Perfect. So let us go to Oracle underscore home slash DBS. So guys, this step I'm doing on the clone, the test server, okay? So ls-lrt, this is the p file. So I'll open this p file. Sorry guys, init prod.aura. So I have this parameter file open. Now mkdir-p, I will create all the directory locations that I see. I'll start with the a dump location, then I'll create the location for the prod, and then I'll create the location for the control files. I think this one is already created, but I'll just copy and paste it, and I don't see any other location over here. So just hit enter and all these directory locations are created. Perfect. So guys, one more step that you guys need to add up over here is you need to create all the locations where your like the source database data files reside. So let us connect to the SQL Plus. This is a test, so we are ignoring it, but in real time you need to make sure you're creating all the locations of select name from $data file. So you have to create all the locations of the data files also, in case if the data file locations are different. In our test scenario, we have only one location where we have everything, the data file, the control file, and also the log file. So we are ignoring it, but just one more step you need to add in real time. Make sure you are looking at the locations of the data files and also select member from $log file, and you have to create these locations also. Once you are done with all the locations creation on the clone server, next take the clone server database to nomount stage. Because we have the parameter file on the clone server, we can definitely take it to the nomount stage. Make sure you export the oracle underscore SID to prod, because the SID we are cloning from the source is also prod, right? Now connect to SQL Plus / sysdba and then perform startup no mount. You can only take it to no mount stage over here because we only have the parameter file. The control files, the data files will automatically come via the RMAN cloning from the source server. One thing you guys need to remember over here, and this is something I have told people 1,000 times, but they always miss it. Okay, read this notice. It says cloning will fail if you do not exit from SQL Plus. Many DBAs, they keep the clone server at this stage. They do not exit the SQL Plus, and they will go to the prod server and they will try to fire the cloning, the RMAN cloning command, and the command fails. The reason why the RMAN cloning command fails is over here Oracle thinks that a user is connected to the database and there is one live user session. So RMAN will not disturb the live user session, and that's why cloning fails. It is must, and you got to exit from the SQL Plus on the clone server. So what all we have done, guys, very simple steps. If you look at the article again, we created a listener on the clone, we created a TNS entry from the prod server which connects to the clone server, we created the p file from sp file, we copied the password file from prod to the test server, and then we created all the directory locations which are required to hold all the data files, control files and all, and then we took the target or the clone database to no mount mode. All right, simple steps, right? Now here is the beauty. With just one command, I mean this is the command, duplicate target database to prod from active database, no file name check. This one command will clone your production database, live running database active from the active running database, where even if you don't have any backup of the prod database, RMAN will automatically clone from the live database, the one that is already running. So the first thing that you need to do is connect to the RMAN target sys, and then you have to connect to the auxiliary database. What is auxiliary? Auxiliary is the clone server. If you don't connect to it, you won't be able to perform this cloning. So from where you will connect on this RMAN, you need to connect to RMAN from the main prod server, because from the prod database, I mean this is the database from where RMAN cloning has to be initiated. I'll exit from SQL Plus. So RMAN target says this is connecting to the prod. So when I say RMAN target, this is connecting to the prod, and I need to connect to the auxiliary, and then you have to give the username at. So what is the TNS entry name you have given for the connection to the clone server? In our case, we have given it as prod underscore clone. Hit enter. This will ask you password for the target database. Give the sys user password. So I will type the sys user password over here. Alright, so it is connected to the target database. Also, this is where the DBAs get confused. RMAN will ask you the sys user password for the auxiliary database. And many DBAs think that, okay, so we are about to clone the database, right? What is the auxiliary database? It is the clone database, right? So the clone database does not exist. So what password to give over here? To keep it simple guys, just give the same target sys user password once again. Why we do it? Because you copied the same prod server password file onto the clone server, right? So the password that you give over here will be authenticated via the password file that we copied onto the clone server. So I'll give the exactly same password. Let us type it and see. Can you see it says connected to auxiliary database, not mounted. Over here I have also mentioned a note, give same sys password for both target and auxiliary to keep things simple. And the most important command, this one command will start the duplicate of your production database from the active live running database, where even if you don't have any backups, that's perfectly okay. Let me fire this command, but before firing this command, always go to your clone server. Make sure you are out of the SQL prompt, otherwise the cloning will fail. Let us go back to the prod server. I will fire this command, duplicate target database to what is the name that you want to clone. I want to clone to the same SID, that is prod, from active database, right? I want to like perform the cloning from the live running database, and no file name check. That means I want to keep all the files in the same location. And guys, this no file name check parameter is a pretty old one. I mean, there's no actual significance of it, but the only condition is you have to keep it there. If you don't keep it, the cloning will fail. Let me hit enter and we will wait for RMAN to perform the cloning. You will see how simple it is to perform the active database RMAN cloning over here. At this stage, if you see guys, what RMAN is doing is it restored the clone primary control file. So control files are copied onto the target server, that is the clone server, and now RMAN will start restoring the data file. So it is copying the system data file onto the clone server. But before even copying this one, if you see this one, the target database is put into mount mode. If you remember, we only put the target database into no mount mode, and RMAN copied the control file and put the target database in mount mode for us. Now it is proceeding further to copy the data files. You can see the system data file is copied already. Now it is proceeding to copy the sysaux data file onto the clone server. Awesome. All the data files are copied. You can see now RMAN is proceeding to recover the target or the clone database using the existing archive logs. It is copying the archive logs on the target server, and then it is performing the recovery. And once the recovery is completed, then it will start the instance again and it will open. Can you see alter clone database open, reset logs? It is opening the target clone database and it will be ready in a minute for us to use. So meanwhile this comes up guys, let us count the number of steps are involved in order to perform the RMAN cloning. We can see we set up the listener, step 1, set up the TNS entries, step 2, then we copied the p file and the password file, step 3, then we created the directory locations on the clone server, step 4, and then we put the target or the clone database into no mount mode. This is step 5, and step 6 we issued the duplicate target database command. That means you can perform the RMAN cloning from prod to a test server by just following 6 steps. Very simple, straightforward steps. And guys, we did not take any backup of the prod database. It is from a live running database cloning. And over here, you can see finish duplicate database at this point of time. Awesome. Let us go to the clone server. So guys, the first thing that we need to check, I will clear the screen meanwhile. So I'll connect to the database, or let us do this, ps-ef grep pmon. We can see prod database is up and running. Let us connect to the database /sysdba. Now select name comma open underscore mode from $database. Guys, if you remember, we only put this database in nomount mode before cloning. Let me hit enter, and can you see this database is currently in read write mode. Awesome. Let us also check whether this database is running from pfile or spfile, because earlier we only copied the pfile, right? So show parameter spfile. Can you see this instance is currently running with spfile? So you should have a question like from where spfile came. If you go back and read through the RMAN cloning output, you will see that this creates the spfile for the database instance. Let us look at, can you see create spfile from memory? So the RMAN script is creating spfile for you, and after creating the spfile, it shuts down the instance and then starts it in nomount mode. So the RMAN is smart enough, it knows that it has to create the spfile, so it created the spfile. Now show parameter control. This will show us all the control files. So there are 2 control files. Again, you can also check select name from $data file. You can see all the data files are available, and also select name from, select member from $log file. Perfect. That is how simple RMAN cloning is using the active database. So you can use RMAN to perform the duplicate from the active database. Awesome guys, I think you enjoyed this activity. Very simple, straightforward, 6 steps. You can perform cloning of any database. But guys, one of my personal recommendation is use this method of RMAN cloning only when your database size is small. If your database size is in terabytes, you cannot use RMAN active database cloning, because it will take, I think, ages for you, not for you, actually for RMAN to perform the cloning from prod to the test or the dev server. Don't use this method for multi-terabyte databases. This method is sweet and simple method for very small databases. That's all for today guys, and we will catch up in our next video. Bye.